The BBC's creative diversity head has been arguing that the hit TV show Luther lacks authenticity as Idris doesn't play a black role. And there are all sorts of comments about friends, family, home life. There's no nuance to it. It's just a bloke in there. And so, what we're talking about today is whether or not you need anything else in there. You need to be culturally sensitive. Isn't it enough that he's a fantastic actor, fantastic detective, and a fantastic show? Does it need anything else, or do you need other things as well? What do you think, Calvin Robinson is a political advisor and commentator. Calvin, lovely to have you back on the show.
Fantastic to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
Right, so I mean, look, it's getting a lot of coverage, and
Yeah.
actually, it's polarized opinions in quite an interesting way because it's always good to have the conversation, isn't it? What are your thoughts broadly?
I'm taken aback by the comments by the BBC's diversity chief, to be honest with you. I thought we'd moved away from racial stereotypes. And now we're saying that someone isn't black enough if they don't have black friends on screen and not eating Caribbean food. I mean, firstly, Idris Elba's African, not Caribbean, but this idea that there's a way to be black. I love Luther. It's one of my favorite TV shows, and it's great because for me, he's a British guy that happens to be black, and the show is about his character. It's not about him being black. Not every show starring a black person has to be about them being black. I think we've progressed past that stage, and to bring it all the way back down to these racial stereotypes is disappointing.
Well, have we though? Because as I said, it isn't everybody isn't saying what you're saying or what Miranda's saying, and certainly there are people who say, well, actually, in order to be authentic, it has to have a sense of belonging. It can't just be colorblind in that way. What about where he lives, where he was brought up, what helped him form the opinions and become the person that he is?
What about them? I think in this country, we can become anything we want to be. It doesn't matter what color our skin is, and we have different experiences. Yeah, based on where we live, true, but that doesn't
Yeah, but
necessarily
you're
affect.
doing two different things here. Because if you take it down that road, then I have to tell you, as a person, a
Yeah.
black man of color, that I know that I necessarily agree with that. But if we stay with the show, then that makes sense. I mean, I'm happy to talk about
All
it
right,
in
so
any way you want. My dad said that, by the way. I don't know if I've ever told you this before. My dad said he came to this country
yeah,
because Britain is the kind of country that in 5 years
yeah.
you can make yourself a man.
I had this yesterday. So before the whole Idris thing, the pubs opened on Monday. I went out with some friends, took some photographs, put them on Twitter, and there was a massive backlash because people say, "Okay, Calvin, where are your black mates?" And I have plenty of black mates. I have mates from all over the place because I live in London. I've got Iranian mates, Chinese mates, white mates. It doesn't matter to me. I don't think, okay, I'm taking a photograph.
Mm.
I need to get a certain number of black people in here. And this is the exact thing that's happened today with Idris in saying that
No, no, it isn't.
Luther Luther didn't have enough black friends. Yeah, it is. They said he didn't have enough black friends to
No,
be
it
real.
isn't. No, it isn't.
The
You've
exact
made
comment
your
is he
career. You
isn't black enough to be real. That's a direct quote because he didn't have black friends.
you
He doesn't have any black friends. Another direct quote from the diversity chief.
well, they're pushing back hard, and I don't normally get, even though I work here, I don't normally get it. But certainly, they're talking about it being an award-winning show. They're saying that Miranda Whalen's words were taken out of context. There were all sorts of things that she was talking about, and she was talking about how to achieve a level of authenticity, which may have included where they came from, who their parents were,
Yeah.
what they believed, who their friendship groups were, and that the Mail and others have taken just that quote because it suits their narrative to kind of talk about her as a pejorative.
Well, I mean, it comes down to seeing race everywhere, doesn't it? And that's the problem. I'm along the old-fashioned lines of trying to be colorblind and race not being important. But if you do want to see race, if you want to look at racial stereotypes, Eddie, I grew up watching you on The Real McCoy. That is what racial stereotypes was about, breaking them down, laughing at them, mocking at them, because we don't define ourselves by these stereotypes. Being black in Britain doesn't mean you have to live a certain way or speak a certain way or eat a certain food. It means you're free to do whatever the hell you want to.
But it isn't. That's what I say. If you stay within the realms of TV, then it's a different conversation. If you come out of that and say you can be. Yesterday, Calvin, we're talking about, or day before, excuse me, we're talking about the 40th anniversary of the you're probably too young, but the Brixton uprisings and
Mm,
where people were and the way that people were handled and it was really interesting to listen to people talk about their experience. And sometimes when I talk to you or I talk to other people, I think that we're challenged to feel that our experience perhaps is the only experience, Calvin.
yeah, that is the point. That's a very, very good point because there is not one homogenous black experience. That's what I'm trying to get at. We're all individuals. We all live our lives differently, and we have a perspective based on the way we've, the world around us, and the way we've grown up. Now, I don't think we should try to assign people to a specific black experience. To say that Luther, the character, needs to have more black friends around him and needs to eat Caribbean food in order to be authentic is disingenuous because not every black person in London has lots of black friends. You might have some or you might not because you live in a multi-ethnic capital. This is a
Yeah,
metropolitan
but if
city.
you, people like you, if we talk about you and I'm not saying that's the only thing you talk about because I can see your resume, right? But you and I will talk about race. You are a person of color who is put up by the establishment to usually talk down racism. It makes people feel
Wait, let's
comfortable.
pause there, Eddie, because I'm not put up by anyone. I have my own thoughts and opinions, and
What,
sometimes,
what,
like you
what?
guys call me to ask me for those
No, that's
opinions.
what I mean.
Nobody
Sorry if
puts
I.
me up,
No, I don't mean they put you up.
and I certainly don't
Nobody.
talk down
You
racism
put
because I've
yourself.
experienced
You
a
put
lot of racism.
yourself up. You are available for interview. That's what I meant. Is that all right?
Yeah,
I don't
that's
listen.
fine.
I just want to. I want us to be clear. It's just you're available. So where I see Calvin on telly, or where I
Hmm.
see you, I watched a podcast you were on a couple of days ago, and when I see you, you're usually talking about race, and when I see you, you're usually talking about how as a person of color, you can be anything, achieve anything, and we
Hmm.
shouldn't just view life through the prism of race. So
Yeah.
if you then post a picture of you in the pub and there aren't any black people with you, I suppose that's why people might go, hey, how can you be? Does that make sense? Because that's what they know you for.
But that's what I'm talking about. If I'm posting a picture with my friends, that is a picture of me with my friends having a drink. If people look at that through the prism of race, they are the ones with the issue. If they see it as a racist problem, like I didn't call around my friends and say, actually, I need to get two more black friends down here to make the quota look balanced. That would be ridiculous. It's the people who see the world through this racial prism making everything racist. Me
Well,
being out with my friends is not a racist situation. And I talk about race because, you know what, I hate talking about race, but I talk about it because I'm in a privileged position in that I can talk about it without being automatically cast aside as racist. If many, many people in this country said what I say, they would get cast aside, especially white folk. We've reached a point in this country where there are only certain
is that
number of
something
us
you're
that can
Is
have this
that something you're
conversation.
proud of then?
No, that's something I'm terrified of. I think everyone should be able to engage in this conversation. If we want to make progress in this country,
Yeah, but what?
which I assume we all do,
Yeah, we do.
we all need to be part of the conversation. We can't cast people aside and say, actually, you're not allowed to engage in this topic. This is for us. This is special.
Nobody's told anybody that they can't engage. We're in a time where a woman born in Bethnal Green has been told she can't come back to the country as she has to go to Bangladesh. We're in a place where we've got Brexit, which for many people was predicated on race. We're in a time where people who came over to this country in the late 50s, early 60s were systematically, apparently targeted under a number of different governments because they weren't quite good enough because they couldn't show bank records. So we are in a place where many people feel that their experience is exemplified by race.
And I find that very sad. I really do. I think we've got to move past a point where everything comes down to the color of our skin. It doesn't determine your personality type. It doesn't determine the food you eat or the company you keep, and it shouldn't. And we need to move past that. And the only way to do that is working together and not trying to segregate our society into different types of people.
And I accept that. But if the idea that my parents are born in Dominica and therefore I can be sent back to Dominica on the basis of my colour, if the Windrush generation is based on colour, people coming mostly from the Caribbean and the Commonwealth, you can't ignore that because it's a statement of fact, Calvin.
What am I ignoring?
You say it's sad that everything is viewed through colour, and then the colour isn't the defining thing
Yeah, no,
through all things. And I'm giving you examples, quite big examples, of where many of the people who have found this show talk about it and explain it and give me an example and a life experience based on colour.
sure. I mean, I'm not saying color isn't an issue in people's lives. I'm saying it shouldn't be, and we need to work towards making it not an issue. And I don't think this is work. This is helping. I don't think a so-called diversity chief saying in order to make something more authentically black, you need to introduce more black friends and make him eat more black food. I think that's a step backwards. I think in a multi-racial, multi-ethnic society, any person should be able to eat whatever the hell they want and associate with whoever the hell they want.
Why do you watch Luther?
Because it's a gritty crime drama. It's very British, and it's not, it's not cheesy American or anything like that. It's realistic, down to its core. And Luther is a complex character with many problems. He actually doesn't have any friends, never mind black friends. But I think it's a great show, and I've watched it, and I can identify with the character in that I can empathize with him. I think he's a great guy, very troubled, but I don't think he needs to look like me. I don't think he needs to talk like me. I don't think he needs to act like me because it's fiction. And that's what fiction is, right?
Yeah, but you say that. I've interviewed Idris where he had to have protection when he took the role in the Avengers because they were talking about, this all-seeing, all-knowing person from Asgard being a black man, and people were prepared to try and kill him for it. So you could talk about it being fiction, but for some people it's quite serious. I've got a colleague here at the Beeb who said to me today she only watched Luther because Idris was black. Is that racist, do you think?
I wouldn't say that's racist, but I think it's a strange reason to watch a show just because someone has the same melanin count as yourself.
Really?
I like the fact that Luther was black, but it wasn't the core of his identity. I like that he was proud to be a Londoner, and he had lots of London colleagues, and it was set in an area that I recognised, which was all very fun. But it wasn't I am black. This is my life. We've moved past that point, or at least that's what it looked like to me.
But there are so many adverts and so many things that are predicated on the idea that here is somebody that looks like me, sounds like me, and that's what people spend billions of pounds doing. I've just spoken to somebody, hopefully going to the Olympic Games, and it was as a young woman to inspire other women. So you don't believe in any of that.
Right. So okay, let's bring it back down to the friends of the fruit. So me as a mixed race person, tonight I'll probably have, I don't know, let's say I'm going to have a burger. Now, does that make me less black because I'm not having rice and peas and jerk chicken?
You could have a little plantain with the burger, couldn't you? Do you know what plantain is?
That's a question. You're trolling me
I'm so glad you got it. Yeah, but there's no point. I mean, otherwise we're just gonna have a conversation that doesn't have any humour, and it must have humour.
I agree with you. Humour helps. It helps break down these divides. But to me, whatever I eat doesn't affect my personality, and I don't like the idea of blackness being a personality type. Anyway, it's a skin color. Black is a skin color. It's not a personality type. Are you agree with me on that?
I don't know. For me, it's a culture. For me, it's where I come from, and it's an experience. It's for me. If we are able, if I don't get in trouble for talking about my own experience, they don't want us to do this, but it's ridiculous for us to have a conversation as two men of color without having it. So let's do it. For me, it's about where I came from. It's about my mum coming to this country, saving up to buy somewhere, living on a council estate, never having a sense of belonging, getting into the National Youth Theatre and then being told to go on a music program, and then coming here and looking around me, there being no one like me on this station or 39 or whatever local radio stations that isn't doing something called the Flying Dutchport or Rice and Peas. So for me, it has been a defining thing, if I'm honest with you, because so many of the roles that I've gone up for, so many of the things that I've done, and I accept I'm not in the normal world, Calvin. Let's just get that. My life is a little bit different because I'm not in the normal world. Has been about my colour and whether or not it would be nice to have a black guy in this position today.
But if I break down what you've just said, it's about that sense of belonging. And you didn't find that sense of belonging elsewhere, so you found it in your skin color, which I find, if that helps you, great. But I find it quite sad.
But I don't make that. Every time I have the conversation with you, the one thing I've always wanted to say to you is, you talk about it as though I or any black person says it. It is by the experiences that we have when we go for jobs, when people talk to us, when they try to play with our hair, when all of those experiences create your kind of, me anyway, a kind of almost sometimes a paranoia where you have to think of things and then act as opposed to acting on what you think.
But that's talking about something else. That's talking about the assumption of racism. So, for example, if someone, like I've got big afro hair, if somebody wants to touch my hair, I'm not assuming that they're being racist. I'm assuming that they probably haven't seen a big afro before,
So
and
it's
they
all
want
right.
to
So it's all
know
right,
what it
is it?
feels like.
It's all
But
right.
no, it's about the intention.
Yeah, but
I
I'm.
find that personally quite annoying. I don't want people touching my hair, so I would refuse them the request. But I wouldn't assume that they're being racist in asking. It's a different experience. And that's the problem. If I looked at the world through a racial lens, I would say this person is racist because they want to touch my Afro-Caribbean hair, whereas they're not. It's all about the intent. But bringing it back to what you said about the sense of belonging,
Mhm.
that for me is the most important thing in anyone's life. You get that from your faith, you get that from your community. If you don't have a faith, you're relying on your community. And it sounds to me, from what you've expressed, that your community was the black community, so to speak. Whereas I think it would be much better if we could all subscribe to the British community. Therefore, it doesn't matter
What is that?
well, indeed, but
Now that's your planting question, is it? Now you're patronising me, so that's okay, is it?
no, I'm not trying to patronize. I'm trying to say I don't
Yeah,
like
but
us being
you can't.
segregated into
Yeah, but I
different
can't
groups based on
subscribe
our
to
immutable
something. Right,
characteristics.
I'll let you talk in a minute. Let me just explain, because I can't subscribe to something. I am the victim of something. I am experiencing something, and something forms the backdrop of my life. I don't create it. I deal with what I find and how I'm treated. I haven't created. I'm talking about me. I don't. I'm not saying that my experience is typical of anybody else's. How have you done it then? Tell me a little bit about you.
Well, I will do, but first of all, I don't know what you meant about you're the victim of something. You're a very successful man, Eddie. I think many people would be happy to be in your shoes. But
Yeah, but I'm
what do
not
you want?
great. Yeah, but that's the problem for me. You see, I've never been one of those grateful black people. I could be a lot further. I should be a lot further.
Have you
So
been
I'm
held
not.
back because
I'm
of the
not
color of
great.
your skin?
I'm not. I don't know. I'm just. You're telling me about being happy that I've got to where I've got to. I've never been grateful. So I'm
Interesting.
not here because whatever, or I might have come in the first place, but I've won a Sony. I've earned my point. So in terms of black people achieving or whatever, it still doesn't mean that they've got to where they feel, or perhaps they could have gone to.
That's very interesting because I see that a lot, and this is the victimhood mentality that I talk about. Because we get to a point in our lives where we take a look at our lives and think, have I achieved success, or am I where I wanted to be? And if we're not, we don't always take personal responsibility. We quite often say, actually, I'm not, and it's probably because this country is institutionally racist and it's set to held me down, and people are holding me back. If it wasn't for the white man, I would be reaching the upper higher echelons of society. I think that's an excuse. I think that's a very, very bad mentality to have. We should take responsibility for our own lives. And if we achieve success through hard work, we should be thankful to that, not to any person, thankful to God if we believe in Him, but thankful to ourselves for working hard and achieving success.
So tell me a little bit about you.
Um, I grew up in a former miners' town in the Midlands. We were one of the first black families in the town. We experienced a lot of racism, which is why I feel like I can talk about it without people saying, you don't know what you're talking about. I went to university, one of the first in my family to go to university, worked really hard. I think I have a decent job now, and I put a lot of effort into it, and I thank God every day for being where I am. I think I'm quite privileged compared to a lot of people. And I acknowledge that, and I try to help other people achieve success in their lives.
The you talked there about institutional racism, and I accept this is a far-reaching interview, right? And if you are uncomfortable with any of it, please tell me, right? Because I just think it's a good conversation, and it's the type of conversation when I meet someone, they're going to say, "I agreed with Calvin. It was really good to hear somebody say that," or "I didn't understand this." So and we're able to do that after 7 o'clock. So I just want to make sure
Yeah,
you're okay, Calvin,
I'm an
with us
open book,
talking.
Eddie. Go for it.
No, I just want to talk. So in terms of what you're saying, last time you came on, we talked about the Sewell report, and
Mm.
it looks and it forms the backdrop to quite a lot of what's happening. It seems like that's unraveling because many of the architects or people quoted in that say, "Hey, I wasn't asked," and there is now, I think, something in the Independent which suggested that it was rewritten by Number 10. Have you changed what you thought about that report?
Not at all. I'm really sad about the whole report situation actually, because if people actually read it, so it's 200 odd pages, it's not that long. If people read it, they'd see, it addresses a lot of issues in our society, and it offers a lot of positive ways around it, a lot of solutions. And what we should be doing as a community is all coming together and saying, let's make sure the government implements this and improves society for everyone. But instead, what we're doing is we're arguing around around the report, about institutional racism, around the wording, around what we wanted to see in it rather than what's in it. We're not focusing on what is actually in it and making those improvements.
Well,
And
I don't
I
know.
find
You
that very
say
sad.
that 16 of the recommendations have been made before. None of the architects of that report have debated. None of them have. I've had more chats with you than I have with anybody who was actually involved in the thing. None of them have debated anybody on a public platform. I've never
That's
seen
not
that.
true.
I've never. Who did?
So Tony Sewell's been out in the papers this week. Mercy Maroki was on
No, you're talking
Trigonometry
about out
yesterday.
in a paper. That's not what I said, Calvin.
So
Deb-
debated in public.
no, so somebody who thinks that it was a sellout, somebody who thinks that it was written by people who have no integrity, debating with somebody who was part of it. Have you heard that?
I don't know. I don't think that's really a positive. I don't think anyone would want to do that. Debating what's in the report, fine, but I don't think anyone's going to
Well,
set.
I put extremes out there so that, somebody
Yeah,
who didn't agree. Sorry, this is just the way I speak. Somebody who didn't agree with what was in it. I've never heard it debated. And now the number of people who come out and saying, well, my name's on it, but I didn't have anything to do with it. Kunle came out the other day and he was defending it on Sky TV the other day, saying he's embarrassed by it. So the very people who wrote it, the person who's the advisor to the Prime Minister on race, resigned the very next day. These things are linked, aren't they?
well, I'm not going to speculate about these people because there are different things at play. But all I can say is the report itself is fantastic. I wish more people would read it. And you said 16 of the recommendations have been made before. Then, therefore, that's another reason we should all get behind it and make sure that we hold the government to account and make sure that they actually implement the actions that are recommended rather than leaving it. And I think a lot of people are afraid right now of the woke mob. The woke mob's really been going after this report and the commissioners, attacking them personally with ad hominem attacks. It's disgusting. Let's focus on the content.
Great speaking to you again, Kelvin.
Always.
I wouldn't. Have you ever plaited it?
I have. I've had funky dreads. I've had high top. I've had everything.
Good to talk to you. We'll talk again. Maybe we should, I don't know, talk about gardening next time or something like that, or that burger that you had. Thank you very much. Calvin Robinson there, talking to me. Well, it's a wide-reaching one, wasn't it? Because I was in that mood. I'm sorry. But it was supposed to be just about whether or not something is authentic, whether something has to, it's about Luther. And Idris plays Luther, whether or not he has to eat Caribbean food, have black friends, whether you have to know where he comes from, or whether or not true colourblind casting is just a character. Because he's a detective, isn't it? It's not, the colour doesn't define him. Interesting. Gerald?